Hello, everybody. Welcome to Jockey Fitness. I am Graham Nolan, your host, where we're going to motivate, inspire, and educate about getting your health back. We've all made those resolutions. This is our second episode, and I'm going to blow your mind today. We're going to talk about something that has really, there's an uncovering of the truth, I should say, about this subject, and that is fat. That fat makes you fat. And nothing could be further from the truth. Fat is a necessary macronutrient that you need, that your body needs. We use it to regulate our hormones. We use it for energy. We don't. It's an essential macronutrient, just like protein. You know what macronutrient we don't need? And that is carbohydrates. We don't need them because if we have an excess amount of proteins in our body, our brains will manufacture glucose and create the carbohydrate energy that is necessary. But how did we get to this place? How did we get to this thing where we demonized fat? And we're told by the American Heart Association, saturated fat is bad, animal fat is bad. It leads to heart attacks. And this started in the 1950s, and now we have a population that's insulin resistant, that's obese, and is dying. They're actually the lifespan in the United States has actually gone down now, and that's a terrible thing. We should be living longer. We should be living healthier. Did you know that prior to the early 1900s, heart disease was almost unknown? Well, what changed? Well, diet, for one thing. Plus, people working in manufacturing plants and stuff, less active, less physical. They're not on the farm as much and working and lifting bales and all that kind of stuff. So lifestyle changed too, but primarily it was diet. And in the 1950s, well, first off, why should you listen to me? Why should you listen to this nut who says that fat is not bad for you? Well, you shouldn't listen to me. I'm no doctor, but I do know a doctor, Dr. Philip Ovadia, who is a world-renowned cardiologist and thoracic heart surgeon who wrote a book called How to Stay Off the Cardiologist Table. And he'll be the first one to tell you that the research shows and has always shown that saturated fat does not cause heart disease. So that's where I started digging, and I wanted to find out, well, where did all this stuff come from? And I came across an article, and I'm gonna I'll put it in the description of today's episode so you can read it yourself. But it comes from the Opinion of Endocrinology, Diabetes, and Obesity Journal. And it goes through the whole history of saturated fats and how they became demonized, particularly in this country. And it all starts with a gentleman who was a physiologist by the name of Ansel Keys, who came up with a theory. And it was called the diet heart hypothesis. And he reasoned that after touring through war-torn post-Europe, that certain poorer populations had less heart attacks than richer, and it was because that they were eating less saturated fats. And so he formed this hypothesis, and by all accounts, the guy was, what's the word I'm looking for? Aggressive in his trying to stick to his hypothesis, regardless of what research proved. And so he won over some big names. One of them was a guy by the name of Paul Dudley White, who was an influential cardiologist and the personal doctor of Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, Eisenhower suffered several heart attacks when he was in office. And so the spotlight got focused on him and on heart disease. And it was this White, Paul Dudley White, who was starting to tell everybody that, this is heart disease, and that he has to go on these low fat, he was eating Melba toast and uh, low cholesterol foods and all this other stuff, no butter, just margarine, which, what could be worse for you than margarine? I mean, butter is all natural. Um, the fact that Eisenhower smoked like a chimney, that doesn't play into the idea that he had heart disease, or that's what might have caused his heart disease. Uh, but anyway, this was something that started to take off. And the second authority that became on board, I should say, of this theory was the American Heart Association. And White was one of the founding members of the American Heart Association. And the AHA was always a leading proponent for heart health. But this is where it gets interesting, and it's the type of thing that you have to remember, and that is that follow the money. Whenever something is wacky, that doesn't make sense to you, look for the money and follow that trail back. And so when the AHA started promoting this stuff, it's been found out that they had significant donations in the research by Procter & Gamble, who were the makers of Crisco oil and all the seed oils and all that stuff, margarines that they were promoting in place of the polyunsaturated fats and all that kind of stuff. And they donated $1.7 million to them. I believe that was 1948. And that translates today to, I think, $20 million in today's dollars. It was a donation that was transformative, and it propelled the AHA into a small group, into a national organization. And vegetable oil companies such as Crisco reaped the benefits of all the recommendations that came about of it, as a result. And since 1970 to 2014, the consumption of this stuff has risen by 90%. And we know that seed oils are terrible for you. So, there's funny business that went into this, and it was a false narrative. But it's hard to get the information out now. Now, doctors are starting to get this information. The AMA has even come around and started looking at this, and they're doing more and more research. And all of that and much more detail is in this article that I really encourage everybody to read. Because what happens to most of us when we've made this commitment, as I mentioned on Monday, that you drop your fat content, you eat this low-fat food, and you're miserable. You're miserable because if you take the fat out of foods, well, you have to replace it with something. And all these corporations, these food corporations, replace it with sugar and salt. And salt necessarily isn't bad for you, but in combination of everything else, it's not good in these processed products. You're better off just eating the fat. It's much more satiating, and it's good for you, and leaving the carbohydrates behind. So that's the reason I wanted to talk about this is that as you start your diet for the new year, do some research. Find out, don't take my word for this stuff, but look into it because the information is out there. You know what I had for lunch today? I had a ribeye steak. I didn't have potatoes with it or rice or anything else. I just had the steak and a big old glass, 22 ounces of water. Satisfying. I'm not hungry until even at dinner time. I'm not all that hungry. It just it really, really powers you through. You don't have the crash that you get when you load in a bunch of carbohydrates, particularly at work. When you're after lunch, you'll get that crash. You don't get that when you're eating protein and fats. So something to think about, something to look into. And I just suggest you do some homework, because the truth is out there, as they said in that what was that TV show, the UFO one. I can't remember. The X-Files. That was it. The X-Files. So anyway, that's what we're talking about today. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to be broadcasting these things, or rather, I'll be posting them on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. So, to get you started in the week, Wednesday to motivate you over the hump, and Friday to get you through the weekend. And, next week, or rather Friday, we'll be talking about some body weight exercises that you can do if you don't have access to a gym to get your body moving. So again, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you Friday. You have a great day. Bye-bye.